Coming at you live from New York. This is Spirit Matters, your daily Bhakti Center podcast. My name is Dal Gurunga, along here with Kishore Chandra. And our tri-host, Achyuta Gopi, is not here with us this morning because she's got a mouse in the house and couldn't sleep because she was trying to find the mouse. Every now and then, one of us will get a text message at like 2 a.m. that says, I'm not sleeping. I can't make it to the podcast tomorrow. That's why there's three of us. We're always here for each other. We're always here for each other. And we have a WhatsApp chat because everything begins and ends with a WhatsApp chat. And we got one for our Spirit Matters. And it's a beautiful, beautiful place where people look out for each other. Every now and then somebody will send something out in need of prayer or in need of just some support, and people are there for each other. And so it's always beautiful. My Rasika Gopi, my wife's father, had quadruple bypass surgery this week. And I shared it earlier this week maybe it was on Monday. I think I shared it. You weren't here, Kishore, but he actually ended up having the surgery on Tuesday. And he's okay. He's doing well. But Achyuta sent me this really beautiful picture of her altar at home and a little note that said Rasika Gopi's dad, and it was on the altar. And she said, I said a special prayer and offered her noon Gayatri to Rasika's dad, and I thought that was really, really sweet. It was like the best. My birthday was the day before, and I said it was the best birthday gift. It was really sweet.
I had no idea. I need to reach out.
To see how people respond, to see we all have our differences. We all have our different phases of life that we're in. And I think that if we were to take a survey and just look at the variety of people that we have on this show that tune in from different racial backgrounds, ethnic backgrounds, age groups, socioeconomic statuses, even just like hobbies and cultural interests according to movies or art, etc., and just like the vast difference of us. And that in a lot of ways, I used to think this when I lived in an ashram for many years. I lived as a monk in a monastery, and there are people that like I was like, materially, I don't know if I'd ever become friends with these people. Not that I'm saying this about you guys here, but I remember we would talk about that as a group, like what would have brought us together materially, but spiritually, we had everything in common and we became the best of friends. And so I think that it's just so beautiful when we reach beyond the borders of material differences and connect on a beautiful level and realize that we do have so much in common. I love Pasha and Lane and Martha and Rachna and Kimberly and all of our Zoomers and listeners and people out there. And all of that to say, we're here for each other and you're not alone. Should we read the feedback we got from Brian?
Yeah. Do you have it pulled up? I don't have it pulled up.
I'm gonna pull it up right now because he said we could read it. But before I get that, how are you, Kishore? I didn't even ask how you're doing. I just launch.
Yeah, I was just sitting here like, okay.
I wind up the gear in my back. I just wind it up and then just launch it.
Oh my God. I think it's so funny, DG, because I was just meditating yesterday. I'm in a place where I'm like planning for next year's programs at the Bhakti Center and reaching out to different people and etc. And I was just remembering how much we used to do together, and it's shifting a little. Obviously, we're still doing lots of things together, but different things. And I was just thinking about our rapport that we used to have, and we still have, because we're very different in that sense. Like you're someone who's just like, I'm just gonna go and I'm gonna do it and I'm gonna talk. I'm going to launch, and I'm someone who just sits and waits, and I will not speak until.
And then when I run out of gas and need to catch my breath, Kishore steps in and is like, okay, let me bring something composed and cohesive to the table. But we got this beautiful feedback. Should I read it? I got it.
Read it.
So we just launched a new feedback form at the Bhakti Center, and I sent a video out to people letting you know about it, and it's on our newsletter. And you can go to bhakticenter.org/feedback if you want to send any feedback at the Bhakti Center, whether it's a complaint or a suggestion or a appreciation or a concern or a question, and we get your feedback. We take it seriously. And one that we got was from Brian out in Texas, East Texas, with Sydney. And he said in the PS, you can read this. We love you so much. So because he said that we can read it, going to read it. He said, waking up each morning to your beautiful souls is what gives me the strength to face my day. Spirit matters is my daily healing. I never thought that we could find a community of real bhakti where we live, East Texas, but you have become our family. All three of you, well, most days, LOL. That means laugh out loud for those who are still catching up on the acronyms of the times. That's why they call me dad. Okay. Take time out of your morning to give so much love. We truly feel how sincere you are, how your light shines so bright. I can feel it in my soul. All the way from here is incredible. Through all medical and mental issues our families struggle with, it takes you just 30 minutes to show us we are not alone. Never have been and never will be. Your love and devotion, not just for Krishna, but for every soul on this planet, is so real, so honest, and so welcoming. I honestly don't know if I can make it through most days without Spirit Matters and the Bhakti Center. I cannot thank y'all enough. That's a y'all because he's in East Texas. Cannot thank y'all enough in accepting us and following us, allowing us to be part of your amazing family. Oh, and we can't thank, ooh, here's a nice shout out. Oh, and we can't thank our awesome Kimberly enough for being up so early on the West Coast to take notes and give us all of her beautiful love and daily takeaways. Heart emoji. Y'all, Y apostrophe A L L. Y'all are true bhakti. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. Peace emoji, heart and emoji, prayer emoji, rainbow emoji, Brian. That appreciation goes out to each and every one of you because you are this family. You are the people that come together and remind ourselves that we're not alone. That's how we started this podcast. We started this podcast at the beginning of this year during the Omicron resurgence. So we were still in another world. And we just wanted to let people know that you're not alone. We're here. And we just need a daily dose of spiritual insurgence, something like that. Reminder, connection. And so we read from the Bhagavad Gita. We read from Bhagavad Gita. We share what's on our minds and hearts. And then we send you on your way. All right, Kishore, it's my rant.
It's a
You
good
want to
rant.
say anything, or should we just read the Gita?
We should read the Gita.
We should stop just saying stuff and read the Gita. Where are we in the Gita?
We are at a very nice verse.
Ooh.
269.
Chapter 2, verse 69, which means yesterday we read 68.
Yes, yesterday we read 68.
Oh, 69 is a great verse.
Yeah, 69 is a great verse.
You going to read verse 69?
Yep, I'll read it. It says, what is night for all beings is the time of awakening for the self-controlled. And the time of awakening for all beings is night for the introspective sage. And I will read the purport because it's short and it gives a little bit of an explanation of this metaphor. Srila Prabhupada says there are two classes of intelligent people. One is intelligent in material activities for sense gratification, and the other is introspective and awake to the cultivation of self-realization. Activities of the introspective sage or thoughtful person are night for persons materially absorbed. Materialistic persons remain asleep in such a night due to their ignorance of self-realization. The introspective sage remains alert in the night of the materialistic person. The sage feels transcendental pleasure in the gradual advancement of spiritual culture, whereas the person in materialistic activities, being asleep to self-realization, dreams of varieties of sense pleasure, feeling sometimes happy and sometimes distressed in their sleeping condition. The introspective person is always indifferent to materialistic happiness and distress. They go on with their self-realization activities, undisturbed by material reactions.
I got thoughts popping up in my mind, but I've already hijacked half of this entire episode. So I'm gonna turn it over. I'm gonna volley it over to you.
Well, I definitely want to hear your thoughts because I think I really like this verse, and I think it can be like the general concept and point that Krishna is making makes a lot of sense. You know, it's like, okay, the person who is fixed in that transcendence, who is absorbed, right? Like we just, Krishna just spent the last verses speaking about how the quality of someone who is in Krishna consciousness is absorption, right? There's an absorption with spirit as opposed to absorption with matter. So naturally, someone who's absorbed in spirit is disinterested in things going on in the material stratosphere, and vice versa. Someone who's absorbed in the material stratosphere is asleep to what's going on in transcendence. And so that makes a lot of sense to me. And yes, but I think that sometimes when I read this verse, I'm wondering about like, that's the goal, right? The goal is to be so absorbed in Krishna and in higher reality that that we're disinterested in, or we're indifferent, as Srila Prabhupada says, to what's going on. But I feel like this is one of those verses that, like, when people read them, it can be a little touchy, you know, because I think you brought this up yesterday, of this term of spiritual bypassing. And you know, this kind of verse, someone might read it with that lens of spiritual bypassing and feel like, wait, no, but what about the world? Like, what about this material world? And like, what about all the problems? And what about all the things that need to be fixed? And what about this and that and etc. and whatever? And so, yeah, I want to hear your thoughts on this, because I think it's really interesting. You know, I think a lot of people, I remember Pasha was writing a note about that when we were speaking about this subject, and myself, I was speaking about this, have struggled a lot through that understanding of like, well, I'm not supposed to try and fix this place, and I'm just supposed to become indifferent towards it and just be over here fixed in the, you know, absorbed in the transcendence. And so that seems to be a point of contention for some. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
Thank you. Well, I'm really glad that you read the commentary on it, because where Srila Prabhupada begins is there are two classes of intelligent people, and he says materially and spiritually. There's one, people who are intelligent in material activities for sense gratification, which broken down into words we normally use is, we understand how the material world, we understand how to get ahead materially, basically. We understand how to get ahead materially. And the other type of intelligence is an introspective type of intelligence that awakens us to cultivate self-realization. And so what's interesting for me is that the last 1, 2, 3, 4 verses preceding this one all use the word intelligence. So if we read these verses, 65, for one thus satisfied in Krishna consciousness, the threefold miseries of material existence exist no longer. In such satisfied consciousness, one's intelligence is soon well established. Verse 66, one who's not connected with the Supreme can have neither transcendental intelligence nor a steady mind, without which there is no possibility of peace. And how could there be any happiness without peace? Verse 67, as a strong wind sweeps away a boat in the water, even one of the roaming senses on which the mind focuses can carry away a man's intelligence, a man or woman's intelligence. 68, therefore, O mighty armed Arjuna, one whose senses are restrained from their objects is certainly of steady intelligence. So we're using this word intelligence over and over and over and over and over again. And now Srila Prabhupada's taking the opportunity in this commentary to distinguish between what type of intelligence we're talking about. And so when this verse says, what is night for all beings is a time of awakening for the self-controlled, and the time of awakening for all beings is night for the introspective sage, is that some things that make sense spiritually aren't going to make sense materially. And some things that make sense materially aren't going to make a whole lot of sense spiritually. And we're all going to be faced with the choice of where we seek our reassurance from, and where we're going to use the benchmark of how I validate my life choices. And I think a lot of us who come to spiritual life get confronted with that hard, from our friends, from our family. Well, you're not the same person you used to be. Yeah, I know. I'm trying not to be. I'm trying to be a different person. You're not the same person you were. I'm glad that you noticed. Thank you. It's a good thing, you know? And so, you know, or and we get really, really confronted because sometimes when as we evolve in our values, we sometimes end up having to also shift our external life environments, whether it be people, places, occupations, hobbies. There are some things that we need to start doing that we've never done before. And there are some things that we need to stop doing that we used to do a lot of. And there are certain people that we need to spend more time with. And there are certain people that maybe we need to spend less time with. And there are certain people who need to spend less physical time with. And there's certain people that we need to spend less digital time with, like news reporters or, social media accounts or like whatever it might look like. And when you do that, Krishna's warning you, you're going to think maybe you're a little crazy.
Mm,
And people are going to think you're crazy, you know? But that's just because who wants to be normal in an insane world?
mm,
Who wants to be normal in an insane society? And so the idea is that all of us are a little bit cuckoo when you compare yourself to something that's totally different than what your values are. And so we have to stop expecting people who don't share our values to validate our life choices. And so Krishna is saying that, and we don't even have to be critical. It's not to be like, you're just a materialist and you're just stupid. You don't know what's right and wrong. It's like we don't have to be critical. It's like, no, there are just different types of intelligence. And when people are operating from a certain mindset, they're going to have a certain set of values and they're going to use their intelligence in a certain way. And when some people have a different mindset and a different values, they're going to use their mindset and their intelligence in a different way. And therefore, what is night for all beings is a time of awakening for the self-controlled. And the time of awakening for all beings is night for the introspective sage. Whether you look at that literally, like when I lived in the ashram at the Bhakti Center, we would have early morning, we still have early morning sessions like 5 a.m. We're banging drums and dancing up and down and singing kirtan and having our morning prayers and our classes and our worship, etc. And we live on the Lower East Side, First Avenue, between First and Second Street. It's a calmer place now than it used to be. But there were a lot more bars and like heavy duty bars that would just be like, there'd be a wild scene out there. And it's like as we were waking up, they were like coming out and going to bed, and when
mm,
we'd be going to bed at, whatever it is, 9 or 10 o'clock on the Lower East Side, it's like they're just revving up. You ever come out of a Thursday night kirtan at the Bhakti Center at 9:30 at night or 10 o'clock or during the summer? You just had this like transcendental cloud and you're just like, where am I? So like literally it's what's night is day and day is night. And then also figuratively, you know, what I consider to be important, what I consider to be a value,
mm,
may be different from other people.
mm, mm. So many
That's my rant.
good rant. So many good
Good
points.
rant. On a scale of 1 to 10, I give myself that on the rant scale. You
What do
don't
you
have to
get?
answer that question.
It was a good rant. There was
It
a
was a
lot
good
of good
on a
points.
scale of not good to good. It was a good
No, it was
rant.
good. I think my favorite point from that rant um was that we have a choice to make.
Mm,
Because I think that sometimes in spiritual life, um, especially at the beginning, we kind of just go into like, oh, I'm supposed to do the things and I'm doing what they're doing, and okay, I'm bowing down and like this and whatever, and etc. And all of those things are good and important, because it's a physical, reminder of what we're trying to do.
mm,
Become humble, lower our ego, become at the same time, it's like that internal choice of wanting to turn towards Krishna, at each moment in my life, is on us. Like no one else is going to do it for us. Like we have to make that choice, and we're going to be confronted in so many different ways. You brought up friends, family is such a big one. Like when you're going into this a spiritual path and your family might not be, they might think you're nuts. And they're like, what are you doing? What's going on? And
Mm.
so it's also interesting because one of the reasons that when I was speaking before, why this verse can be a little
Mm.
because I think
Mm.
yeah, because
Mm.
I think that when you it is a black and white situation in the sense of like literally we're waking up at 5 in the morning and starting to do prayers in the temple, and people are just finishing up their parties and etc. And at the same time, we shouldn't necessarily, like, I don't know, deride those people, because I think a lot of the times when we see a verse like this at first glance, it's like, oh, they're the miscreants who are just so terrible, and they're lost in Maya and illusion, and they're just
Mm.
whatever. And I am over here, I'm awakened and I'm practicing this, etc., whatever.
Mm.
And that's fine and dandy, but Krishna speaks later in Bhagavad Gita about how the soul is part and parcel of him, how
Mm.
he is in the soul of every single being. And
Mm.
so, and he goes on to speak this later about how one who is really situated in this transcendence doesn't differentiate between people. And so I think, one, it's important to know like where you're at, because at some point you do need to take a boundary, especially at the beginning, because something that someone told me at the beginning of my taking spiritual life seriously that I found very helpful is, we stress a lot this point of association in bhakti. Who am I surrounding myself with? And they made this point about taking association from someone and giving your association, right? Like there's two different things. And they were telling me that like at the beginning of your spiritual life, it's very difficult to not take someone's association when you're physically there, right? So what I mean is like, I'm just going to go to the bar and I'm not going to take everyone's associate. I'm going to preach. I'm going to preach at the bar, and I'm not going to be affected by whatever's going on there. Or I'm going to go hang out with these people that I know are not good for me, but I'm just social obligations and whatever, and it's for Krishna and like whatever. I'm not going to be affected. It's totally fine. And it's like at the beginning of our spiritual life, we have to acknowledge that like we are going to be affected, and we are going to take on people's energy and the color of their emotions, and all of that stuff might come on to us. And so I think it's really important to simultaneously be really important about boundaries. It's like, okay, I'm trying to be this spiritual person, I'm trying to be in touch with my higher self, and it's important to not view it in this like hierarchical, I'm better than you, you're over there, I'm over here kind of way, because that also brings about its own issues and problems.
Mhm. Loving what you're sharing. I was in partial anxiety as you were sharing because at a certain point, I noticed that it said recording paused on this. I don't know. I clicked something to pause the record. I don't know if it was for 2 seconds or the whole rant, but I resumed the recording. If you're listening to this and there was a break, we apologize. But I love what you were sharing because I think it requires that tremendous sense of self-awareness of like, because it's not like it puts the onus on us that like, not like you're the problem, you're so, you know when we get into this place of setting boundaries with ourselves, it's easy to get to a place of thinking that the other person is a problem. I can't hang out with you because you're so bad. You're such a bad influence on me. It's like, no, I am vulnerable to certain things and I'm looking out for myself. And so there are some cases where I can, you said like social obligations or family obligations. Like I think family is a really good example. Even like spiritually minded or not, and especially the holiday seasons are coming up, in America, where you've got, the warm and fluffy and fuzzy things of coming together in the holidays, and also like the terrifying things that it brings up for people, like, oh my God, I got to go see my family. And how we have limits of like how much time we can spend around our family. And that may change from season to season or year to year, et cetera. And it's important for us to just acknowledge that it's not that they're bad people. and we may not have to verbalize this in any way, shape, or form, but for us, it's like, I have my limit of how long I can be in a certain environment before it starts to negatively affect me. That might be an hour. It might be a day. It might be a week or two. And so whether it's family, whether it's friends, whether it's environments, etc., we have to be able to, if we want our spiritual life to last, we really need to be able to, know what what environments I can put myself in and not be affected by. And if we're unsure, it's best to be safe, I guess. I don't want to say safe, but like, it's better to be like, don't put yourself in a situation where you're gonna end up regretting being there.
Yeah, I think it's better to err on the side of caution when it comes to this kind of stuff, because I think something I've noticed about myself is like, you might tell yourself in your mind that like, oh, everything's going to be okay, but you're like throwing yourself into a situation that, you know, might it's like an alcoholic going into a bar, you know, it's like, oh, I'm going to be fine. I'm going to be fine. I can just go and I won't be affected. And it's like you're putting yourself in a situation, you made the choice to put yourself in a situation where your senses are going to be pulled to that thing, you know. And so whether it's family drama, whether it's friends that don't serve us anymore, whether it's exes, or like whatever it is, everyone has so many different situations. I think it really behooves us to
Be sure to use that word every podcast.
I want to make a
It's like
point.
it's like a Where's Waldo. You have to find where he used the word behoove.
It's such a
There it
good
is. Timestamp it. Somebody timestamp that. Behoove.
word. It behooves us to be aware of what our like triggers are, or like what our, you know, thing is that's pulling us away from absorption with Krishna, or our relationship
Mm.
with Krishna, because it will look different for each person. And I think that that's where that personal choice comes in, where it's like you can have a group of friends, and you know, maybe your other friend who's also, let's say, on the path of bhakti or spirituals, like they're totally fine, they can go be with them, whatever. But for you, it's like, oh, this doesn't work for me. So I think it really behooves us to know what our particular unique flavor of distraction is. You know, like this word
Oh.
sense gratification is used so much, but it's really us being distracted and pulled away from that higher reality.
Oh. What are the environments that I thrive in? And what are the environments that I sink in?
Yes, perfect. Yeah.
Um, Beautiful, beautiful. If we had more time, we'd tell the story of Gajendra, and how he exemplifies this point. But you could be super strong, but if you're in a compromised environment, you will experience vulnerability and weakness. Okay. Kimberly, our beautiful taker awayer, distiller of truth, separating the wheat from the chaff, the rants from the realizations. Tell us what you got.
Thank you. So today we're taking away that we are all a little cuckoo.
That's our takeaway. You guys are nuts.
And we have a personal internal choice to turn towards Krishna and find the environment we can all thrive in. And that our souls are part and parcels of Krishna, and we can simultaneously have boundaries and also not differentiate people into hierarchies.
Ooh, boundaries without hierarchies. That's a juicy one. And you guys are all nuts. Final word, Kishore?
Final few words. I forgot to mention this verse. It just came to my mind, but it's one of my favorite verses. I won't get into it so much, but it says that fear arises in the living entity when they turn away from Krishna. And so I'm walking away with that because I need to remind myself that the more I turn away and go into like the material places where I don't thrive in, that are compromised, that is just going to raise my fear, my anxiety, all of that negative stuff that we're going through. It's just going to make it more, you know. And so our bhakti tradition is telling us actually the solution is to turn away from that and to turn towards Krishna. And so that's what I'm walking away with.
Beautiful. I'm walking away with just a reminder, who are the people that lift me up? Who are the people that remind me the path I'm on and why I'm on it? And who are the people that lift you up? And if you're out there listening today, you can ask yourself that question. Who are the people that lift you up, that remind you where you want to be and where you want to go? And how are you intentionally keeping them in your life in a way that you need to? Sometimes it's not comfortable. Sometimes it causes, we have to reach out. Sometimes we have to put ourselves out there. Sometimes we face rejection. Sometimes, we have all of those fears. But it's a matter of spiritual life and death, if you want to put it in dramatic terms. But that's why we're here. We love you. Thank you for being one of our people. If you want to be in touch with us or write to us or ask any questions, you can always do so at spiritmatters@bhakticenter.org. Or we'd love to hear from you always and anytime. Till then, everybody, be well, take care. Thank you all so much. And today's Thursday, so we got another episode tomorrow. See you tomorrow, everybody. Bye-bye.